Chapter 7 Fish I sat stubbornly under a jamun tree in my garden, trying to concentrate on a volume of Nyaya Shastra. It was a large and laborious book that set out the laws of the land, which my brother was currently studying. Soon after Sikhandi's visit, Father had terminated my lessons with his tutor, declaring that I need to focus on more feminine interests. Around me, summer unfurled its drowsy petals in a conspiracy to distract me. Insects sang. Luscious purple jamuns dropped lazily onto thick grass. The paired cry of bright birds pulled at my chest, releasing a strange restlessness. Was this a feminine interest? My companions, daughters of courtiers, clustered themselves under canopies hoisted to protect our complexions. They had been inflicted on me after Sikhandi's visit by my father. He hoped that they would be a good influence, but they merely annoyed me. They murmured gossip, chewed betel leaf to redden their lips, exchanged recipes for love potions, pouted, giggled without reason, and emitted suitably feminine shrieks if a bee orbited too close. From time to time they sent me beseeching glances. If only I had decided to go back inside the palace. This pitiless sun, even with a canopy, it was so bad for the skin. They'd have to spend hours soaked in yogurt and turmeric paste to counter its ravages. I ignored them sternly and continued to read. The book, which described in diligent, morose detail complicated laws concerning household property, including servants and wives, caused my eyelids to droop. But I was determined to learn what a king was supposed to know. How else could I aspire to be different from these giddy girls, or from my father's wives, who spent their days vying for his favors? How else could I be powerful in myself? So I ignored summer's blandishments and battled with the book. But I was fated never to finish learning Nyaya Shastra, for even as I turned the page, Dhaima came from the palace, waddling as fast as her bulk would allow. Out of breath and wheezing, her face an alarming red, she shooed my companions away. Then she whispered the news in my ear, but in her excitement she was so loud that everyone heard it. My father had decided Sikhandi's visit must have stirred up a veritable storm of anxiety in him, that I must be married next month. Ever since the prophecy, I had thought intermittently of marriage, at times with excitement or resignation, at times with dread. I sensed vaguely that it was a great opportunity, but for what I wasn't sure. I'd imagined that it would be similar to the weddings of my father's other daughters, arranged by elders. But Dhaima informed me I was to have a swayamvar. Eligible rulers from every kingdom in Bharat would be invited to Panchal. From among them, my father had announced, I would choose the man I was to marry. After the initial shock, I was filled with exhilaration. I ran to find Dri. "I cannot believe I am going to pick my own husband," I cried. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Don't get so excited," he replied glumly. "Something always goes wrong in a swayamvar, either while it's happening or later." I felt a twinge of foreboding, but I refused to let Dri's words ruin my mood. He was too cautious. Sometimes I told him that the gods must have got mixed up when they pushed us out from the fire. He should have been the girl and I the boy. "I wish father hadn't made this decision so hastily," he said. "You're just jealous that I get to choose my own spouse when you don't," I joked. As a matter of fact, Dri was quite taken with the neighboring princess, to whom our father had betrothed him. I'd surprised him a couple of times gazing solemnly at her portrait, which he kept hidden behind a stack of scrolls. But a question gnawed at me. Why would our father, who delighted in control, allow me so much freedom? "Is it really going to happen?" I asked Dri. "Or is he going to suddenly change his mind?" "It'll happen. He has sent out 100 messengers to invite the most important kings. Pleasure palaces are already being built for them. And—" But Krishna, when had he entered the room? Laughed, startling me. "Oh, it'll happen, Krishna, but it may not be what you're imagining. Truth, like a diamond, has many facets. Tell her, Dhrishtadyumna, tell her about the test." This was what they had planned. My father, the king, along with his ministers and priests, for the good of Panchal and the honor of the house of Drupad. Before the wedding, there would be a test of skill. The king who won it would be the one I'd garland. "Why even call it a swayamvar then?" I cried. "Why not make a spectacle of me before all those kings? It's my father, not I, who gets to decide whom I'll marry." Dri looked unhappy, but he spoke firmly. "No, fate will decide that. It's not an ordinary test that father's setting your suitors. They must pierce a fish made of metal, revolving high on the ceiling of the wedding hall." His support of our father made me angrier. "What's so difficult about that? Isn't that the first thing warriors learn, how to hit a moving target? Or do your enemies sit on the battlefield waiting for your arrow to come and find them?" "There's more to it," he explained, his voice patient. "They can't look directly at the target, but only at its reflection in a pool of whirling water. They must shoot 5 arrows through a tiny hole in a shield to hit the target. Nor can they use their own weapons. They must use the Kindhara, the heaviest bow in existence," Krishna added helpfully. "Your father borrowed it after much supplication from the gods. There's only a handful of warriors in the world today strong enough to lift it up, and fewer still that can string it." I glared at them both. "Wonderful," I said. "So he has set them an impossible task. Is he mad?" "Not impossible," Krishna said. "I know someone who can accomplish it." Arjun, the third Pandava prince, my dearest friend. Arjun? I said in surprise. You never told us he was your dearest friend. There are many things I haven't told you, Krishna said, quite unapologetic. Dhri's eyes were eager. Is he really the greatest archer of his time? I think so, Krishna said. He's handsome too, and a great favorite with the ladies. I think our Krishna will like him. His words had made me curious, though I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing that. Why would our father want me to marry the man who humiliated him? I asked. Arjun didn't humiliate him, Dhri said quickly. He was only following Drona's orders. A warrior has the greatest respect for the man who defeats him in battle. Men, they live by strange rules. I wanted to ask Dhri why our father hated Drona so much. Then, since Drona had been the mastermind behind the defeat. But I allowed myself to drift to more pleasant thoughts. To be the beloved of the greatest archer of our time. To be the woman whose smile made his heart beat faster. Whose frown wounded him almost to death, whose advice guided his most important decisions. Could this be the way I was meant to change history? Krishna smiled slyly, as though he knew what I thought. Then he said, If he should come, if he should win, what a great victory it will be for Panchal. I didn't like the sound of that. What do you mean, for Panchal? Don't you see? Krishna said. Once he's married to you, Arjun can't fight against your father. He can never be Drona's ally again. My mouth filled with ashes. How foolish I'd been, dreaming of love when I was nothing but a worm dangled at the end of a fishing pole. Father designed the test to lure Arjun to Panchal, didn't he? I said. Because he had been defeated by Arjun, he couldn't send a marriage proposal directly to him without losing face. But the swayamvar, it's the perfect opportunity. He knew a warrior like Arjun wouldn't be able to resist such a challenge. Power, that's all he cares about, not his children. I had long suspected this. Still, I was surprised at how much it rankled to articulate it. Panchali, Dhri started. That's not true. Why won't you ever admit the truth? I spoke bitterly. We are nothing but pawns for King Drupad to sacrifice when it's most to his advantage. At least I'm just going to be married off. He's willing to push you to your death just so he can have his revenge. As soon as I had said the words, I was sorry. And not only because Dhri looked as though I had slapped him. Dhaima said one could call up a man's death by speaking of it. Had I brought my brother bad luck because I couldn't control my tongue? I said a quick prayer for his safety, though I wasn't much for praying. Krishna touched my shoulder. Your father isn't as heartless as he seems, my dear. He's just convinced that your happiness lies in being the wife of Bharat's greatest hero. And for Dhri, He is convinced his happiness lies in avenging the honor of his family. Even as Krishna spoke, I seemed to smell blood and burning. I was ashamed of my petty worries. The future that awaited three was so much worse than anything I'd ever have to face. I wondered if it would break him or harden him, and which would be worse. I wondered if I'd prayed for the wrong thing. As for being pawns, Krishna was saying, aren't we all pawns in the hands of time, the greatest player of them all? At night I considered what Krishna had revealed, and why he'd pricked the bubble of my romance no sooner than it had formed. He was trying to teach me something. Was it to be aware of the dark motivations that lay behind seemingly benign actions? Was it to not let myself be carried away by emotion, to see myself instead as part of a larger political design that would affect the fate of Bharat? Was it to teach me how to wear the armor of caution so that no one could reach past it to break my heart? Important lessons, no doubt, but I was a woman and I had to practice them, as Sikandi had suggested, in my own way. I would approach the problem aslant. No matter what my father's intention, I could still make Arjun's heart beat faster. I could still influence how he thought. Perhaps time was the master player, but within the limits allowed to humans in this world the sages called unreal. I would be a player too.